I'm Gull-Britt Leppa. I was then Gull-Britt Larsson, because that's a very typical Swedish name. And I was the youngest in a family with three boys and 2 girls, yeah. And quite a bit younger than the others. So wartime I was still in school in lower grades, actually. Gothenburg, you would pronounce it Göteborg. It's a big harbor, the biggest harbor in Sweden, and that's why a lot of ships, of course with supplies coming in, and because of that they were also very often followed by German warships, because destroying the supplies helped taking care of other business later. So it was a lot of talk about war, bombing. The best news from that time was when the first ship with bananas came in to Sweden. We got bananas, and we were told in school that we were going to get bananas. So we had to draw bananas, and I had a paper this big, and I drew a banana this size, because I had no idea what a banana looked like. But we celebrated the first ship coming in with supplies. It was one of the biggest disappointments of my life. They were not ripened enough, and we didn't know, you know. So my father peeled it for me, and he had to do it with a knife because they wouldn't even come down. And he gave it to me, and I was so disappointed, and I didn't want to show it. And like I said, I was very young, so I was protected a lot by my family, sent out to the country to stay with an older lady, with her and her dog. And because living in a harbor, big harbor city, that's where the bombing would take place first and foremost. When the bombings were going on, or when it was threats, then I was sent. If the parents couldn't, you could just call up and say, we cannot deal with this, and they would be taken care of and sent to camps. And so a child always had care. They opened up completely for children from any other country could come in. Families would accept them. We had a Finnish little girl in my family. She became a very good friend of mine later on, because we were about the same age. While she was in Sweden, she went to school, and she spoke. Finland is bilingual. She wasn't fluently bilingual, but she could manage, and she picked up the rest of the Swedish. So we had quite a good time together, the two of us. So
was there actual bombing in the city?
Nothing major. As I remember it, there were some, but nothing major. There were attacks, but I don't think that they really got anything of the major stuff that they were after. They did in other places of Sweden, but I don't think in Gothenburg that they really did get what they were after, which was mainly the harbor, because of the supplies. If they could stop the supplies from coming in, that was easier to attack other ways. And you didn't want anything to do with the military of any kind, even if it was, we were young, we didn't know if it was Swedish or German, whatever they were, we hid. That's all I remember, trying to find a safe place to hide. My husband later on, he was a sea captain. So he was out. When he was young, he left Estonia, where he was born. As a young child, he left Estonia and ended up in Sweden as a war refugee, and started working on the Swedish ships. And he was attacked, bombed serious situations, very serious situations at times. But he stuck it out, and he continued. He became a sea captain, and later on that became his living. So I guess it had something good with it. You couldn't buy anything without your coupons, your rationing coupons. And they came out, they had different colors. It was the big thing when those came. And the brown ones were for groceries, the green ones were for vegetables and so on. And you got news through the radio how many coupons a family of 2, 3, 4 were allowed to spend within a certain time. So you checked, do we have coupons enough to get this or not? That was us being a big family. It was hard, but my brothers went into the army, and that helped. My father had been, for some reason, he was in smaller businesses, and he had found somewhere a company that had razor blades, packaged nicely, you know, the way they were sold in the store, and he just bought the whole shipment. And it was standing for years in our storage area. Well, the war came, and you couldn't get anything. Steel went to the army only. So razor blades was one of the biggest things you could have. So our family really survived the worst part due to razor blades. And that was my job, to go and count how many boxes of razor blades were left.
Do you remember what it was like when the war was declared over?
Oh, do I ever? Yes. I was still in school, and big celebration. Out on the schoolyard, everybody. We were given candies, and I don't know where they got the candies from, but we were given candies. We were given, I guess it was some juice of some kind, and cookies. Cookies. Ladies were baking, we had cookies. And we were singing the Swedish national anthem, loud and clear. You knew that life was going to change. And that is something that still is there. I remember that feeling, really. That day, seeing these teachers that were kind of boring normally, dancing on the schoolyard. Yeah, that was a good day. Suddenly it was announced on the radio that the first ship came in that had, let's say, coffee, or another one had something else that we hadn't seen for years. And it was always the ration, so that each family could get so much, and it was a lineup outside, and you could go and get home this that you had heard about. That I was so young, I hadn't seen it before, or at least I didn't remember it, so it was very exciting, and I was always the one that was sent to get it, because they knew how much I thought I was very special when I brought home whatever it was. Oranges, I remember oranges, bringing home an orange. And those were amazing days. Mom and Dad did a good job. I'm proud of them. It was a horrible life for so many. I felt that I had it pretty good. So I have no reason to complain. I was taken care of. It's good that it's remembered.